The boardroom fell completely silent as James Wilson stood up, his weathered hand steadying himself against the gleaming walnut table. Though his eyes glistened with unexpected tears, his voice remained remarkably composed as he addressed Alexandra Morgan, the CEO who had terminated his position exactly 4 years ago that day. "Am I still upset with you?" James echoed, a bittersweet smile forming on his tired face. "That termination letter you handed me didn't just end my career, it saved my family." The raw honesty in his response left everyone in attendance speechless, a powerful reminder that sometimes our greatest blessings arrive in the guise of our darkest moments. If this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more authentic stories about resilience, unexpected second chances, and the profound ways life can transform us when everything seems lost. 4 years earlier, James Wilson sprinted through the sleek corridors of Meridian Technologies headquarters in Chicago, his burgundy tie loosened and prominent shadows beneath his eyes betraying his exhaustion. At 43, the senior marketing director looked significantly older than his years, ground down by the relentless demands of corporate America. His morning had already spiraled into chaos. His 11-year-old daughter Sophie had an asthma attack before school, and his 8-year-old son Ethan couldn't find his completed science fair project that was due that day. Since losing his wife Rebecca to cancer 3 years prior, James had been barely treading water as a single father. "Late again, James," commented his colleague Michael as he rushed past his desk. "Morgan's been asking for you all morning, and she looks seriously displeased." James nodded grimly, fully aware that Alexandra Morgan, Meridian's newly appointed CEO brought in from a competitor 6 months ago, had been scrutinizing his performance with increasing criticism. The company was undergoing what Morgan euphemistically called strategic realignment, corporate speak that everyone recognized as the precursor to layoffs. Despite 13 years of dedicated service to Meridian, James knew loyalty counted for little against the almighty bottom line. When he finally reached his office, a message from Morgan's executive assistant awaited him, immediate meeting requested in the CEO's office. James's heart sank as he took the elevator to the top floor, mentally preparing explanations for his tardiness and recent performance issues that had been flagged in his last review. Alexandra Morgan's corner office was aggressively modern and intimidating, all glass, chrome, and stark white furniture with panoramic views of the Chicago skyline. At 45, Morgan had cultivated a reputation as a merciless corporate efficiency expert recruited by the board to revitalize Meridian's sagging stock price. Her ice-blue eyes assessed James coldly as he entered, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized her sharp features. "Wilson, take a seat," Morgan gestured to a minimalist chair across from her desk. "I'll cut to the chase. Your performance metrics have been consistently below standard for the past 2 quarters. Missed deadlines, uninspired marketing concepts, excessive absences, and chronic tardiness." James leaned forward anxiously. "Ms. Morgan, I understand things haven't been ideal lately, but since Rebecca's passing—" "I'm well aware of your personal circumstances," Morgan interrupted sharply, adjusting her tailored navy suit jacket. "And the company has been accommodating. But Meridian isn't a social service agency, and I answer to shareholders who expect results." The clinical delivery of these words hit James like physical blows. "I just need a little more time to get my home situation stabilized. Sophie and Ethan. This isn't about your children, Wilson. It's about business performance." Morgan slid a folder across her immaculate desk. "Your severance details. 3 months' salary, benefits continuation for 90 days. HR is waiting to process your exit today." James stared at the folder in disbelief. "Today? Just like that?" I have 3 major marketing campaigns in development, client relationships that. Your team will manage the transition, Morgan said dismissively, already checking her Apple Watch. I have a board call in 3 minutes. Anger surged through James's exhausted body. 13 years I've given to this company. Countless nights, weekends, even working through family vacations, all while trying to be there for my kids after they watched their mother die. And this is how it ends? A 3-minute conversation? Morgan's expression remained unmoved. I understand you're upset. Upset? James stood, his voice rising. You have absolutely no concept of what my life is like. No idea what it takes to be both parents while trying to meet impossible deadlines set by people who measure success in quarterly increments. You sit in your pristine office making decisions that devastate families without a moment's consideration. That's enough, Wilson, Morgan said icily. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. James's final glimpse of Alexandra Morgan was of the CEO turning away to answer her ringing phone, already moving on to her next task, as if she hadn't just shattered someone's livelihood and sense of identity. The months that followed were among the most challenging of James's life. The humiliation of being escorted from the building by security, the anxiety of telling his children they needed to cut back on expenses, the soul-crushing cycle of job applications that went unanswered, it all pressed down on him like an invisible weight. His savings diminished alarmingly fast, and mortgage payments loomed menacingly. Sophie found him one evening at their kitchen table, surrounded by past due notices and his laptop open to yet another rejection email, his head buried in his hands. "Dad?" she asked tentatively. "Are we going to be okay?" James looked up at his daughter, whose eyes mirrored her mother's, and forced a reassuring smile. "Of course we are, sweetheart. We're just weathering a tough patch right now. Is it because I keep having asthma attacks and you have to miss work?" Sophie asked, her young face etched with worry. "I heard you telling Uncle David that you missed an important meeting because of my emergency room visit." James's heart constricted painfully. He pulled Sophie into a tight embrace. "No, honey, absolutely not. None of this is your fault or Ethan's. Sometimes grown-ups face challenges that we need to solve, and that's my responsibility, not yours." But later that night, after tucking Sophie back into bed, James had a moment of clarity. He couldn't continue pursuing the same high-stress corporate path that had consumed him before. His children needed him present, not just physically but emotionally available. They'd already endured the devastating loss of their mother, they couldn't afford to lose their father to depression and financial anxiety as well. The next morning, James made a decision that would fundamentally alter their family's trajectory. Instead of applying for another executive position, he took honest stock of what truly mattered. What did he genuinely enjoy? What would allow him to be present for Sophie and Ethan? James had always been passionate about photography. It was a skill he had developed in college and maintained as a serious hobby throughout his adult life. During happier times, he had documented their family vacations and special moments with an artistic eye that Rebecca had always encouraged him to pursue professionally. Friends had frequently offered to hire him for events and portraits after seeing his work, suggesting he could turn it into a business. It had remained a someday dream, always deferred for the security of his corporate salary. With nothing left to lose, James converted their spare bedroom into a home studio and used the remainder of his severance to purchase additional equipment and editing software. He named his new venture Wilson Photography and began shooting portraits and small events, starting with commissions from friends and former colleagues who had admired his work over the years. The flexible schedule allowed him to be home when his children returned from school, to attend Sophie's doctor appointments without stress, and to never miss another of Ethan's soccer games. The initial months were financially precarious and emotionally taxing. James learned through trial and error about business licenses, insurance requirements, and the challenges of pricing his work appropriately. There were nights he lay awake wondering if he'd made a catastrophic mistake that would cost his children their security. But gradually, Wilson Photography developed a reputation for exceptional quality and artistic vision. Bookings increased steadily through word of mouth and a growing social media presence showcasing his portfolio. More significantly, James was truly present for his children in ways that had been impossible during his corporate career. He helped with homework without constantly checking emails, attended parent-teacher conferences without rushing back to the office, and actually listened when Sophie and Ethan shared their thoughts and concerns. The perpetual exhaustion that had marked his face began to fade, and for the first time since Rebecca's death, genuine laughter returned to their home. 18 months after his termination, James hired his first assistant, a talented photography graduate who helped with editing and second shooting larger events. By the 2-year mark, he had secured a small commercial studio space in downtown Chicago and had been featured in several regional lifestyle magazines. A prominent wedding planner had become a regular client, referring high-end couples who valued James's distinctive photographic style. What James didn't realize was that his former employer, Meridian Technologies, was experiencing significant difficulties. Alexandra Morgan's aggressive cost-cutting measures had initially boosted quarterly profits, but employee morale had plummeted to record lows. Innovation stagnated as talented staff departed for competitors, unwilling to endure the toxic culture Morgan had fostered. The board was growing increasingly concerned as market share declined and marketing campaigns failed to resonate with consumers. 3.5 years after James's dismissal, Morgan found herself in the uncomfortable position of needing to rebrand Meridian's corporate image with fresh photography for their website, annual report, and marketing materials. The standard corporate photography agencies offered nothing distinctive enough to revitalize the company's stale visual identity. Her new assistant, unaware of the connection, recommended a local photographer whose work was generating significant buzz in Chicago's creative community. "The business is called Wilson Photography," she explained. "The owner creates absolutely stunning visual narratives that would completely transform our corporate materials. His portfolio is impressive, and he's actually within our budget because he's local." Morgan, distracted by the company's declining performance metrics, merely nodded. "Commission him if the work is suitable. The board chairman will be reviewing our rebranding efforts next month, and I want them impressed." 2 weeks later, Morgan visited the studio to review portfolio samples and discuss the project scope. As she entered the stylish, well-lit space adorned with striking photographs, she stopped short at the sight of a familiar face. James Wilson looked up from the camera equipment he was adjusting, momentarily frozen when he recognized Alexandra Morgan. For several seconds, neither spoke. "Wilson," Morgan finally said, surprise evident in her voice. "This is your company?" James nodded, his expression guarded but composed. "For almost 3 years now. Your assistant commissioned us for your corporate rebranding project. I didn't realize you'd be coming personally." An awkward silence stretched between them. Morgan cleared her throat. "Your portfolio is impressive. Very high-caliber work." "Thank you," James replied evenly. "We take pride in what we create here. If you'll excuse me, I need to finish setting up for my next client. My assistant can show you the concept boards we've prepared for Meridian." Throughout the meeting, Morgan observed James interacting with his team of 2 assistants, noting the respectful way they collaborated and the obvious passion they showed for their craft. The photography concepts presented were exceptional, innovative yet professional, with an artistic vision that generic corporate imagery could never achieve. During a break, Morgan overheard a conversation between James and a young boy who had arrived at the studio. "Dad, I scored 2 goals at practice," the boy announced excitedly. "Coach says if I keep improving, I might be team captain next season." "That's fantastic, Ethan." James responded with genuine enthusiasm, giving his son a high five. "Did Grandma pick up Sophie from her doctor's appointment?" "Yeah, and the doctor said her new medication is working great. She hasn't had an attack in almost a month now." Morgan watched as James's face lit up with relief and joy at this news, an expression she had never seen during the man's years at Meridian. There was something fundamentally different about James now, a groundedness, a quiet confidence that hadn't existed before. He seemed genuinely content, engaged with his work and family in a way that made Morgan feel strangely hollow by comparison. As the meeting concluded and Morgan prepared to leave, she approached James, who was seeing off his son. "Wilson," she began somewhat awkwardly, "I wanted to thank you for taking on this project despite our history. The concepts are exceptional." James nodded politely. "It's business. We deliver quality work regardless of who the client is." Morgan hesitated, then continued, "I've been following your company's growth. What you've built here is quite remarkable." "Thank you," James said, his tone softening slightly. "It hasn't been an easy journey, but it's been the right one for us." "Are you happier now?" Morgan asked, the question surprising even herself. James considered this thoughtfully. "I'm there when my kids need me. I create art I'm proud of with my own vision. I'm not missing life while chasing arbitrary targets set by someone else." He met Morgan's gaze directly. "So yes, I'm significantly happier. More fulfilled than I ever was in the corporate world." Morgan nodded, feeling an unexpected pang of something resembling envy. "Meridian isn't performing as well as projected," she admitted. "The board is expressing serious concerns." "I've heard," James replied. "Cutting experienced staff only generates short-term gains. Eventually, you need to build something people care about creating and maintaining." The conversation might have ended there, but as Morgan turned to leave, she paused. "Would you consider consulting for us? Just some creative direction for our marketing department. The campaigns have lacked vision since many of our experienced team members left." James looked genuinely surprised. "You're asking me to help the company that fired me?" "I'm asking you to consider it," Morgan said. "On your terms, your schedule. We'd compensate you appropriately as a consultant, of course." James promised to think about it, and they exchanged contact information. Over the following months, James did provide limited consulting for Meridian, strictly on his own terms and schedule. His creative insights helped the company begin to correct its course, and a reluctant professional respect developed between the two former adversaries. Which brings us back to the boardroom at Meridian Technologies, 4 years after James's termination. The company was hosting a special recognition event for local business partners who had contributed to Meridian's recent turnaround efforts. James had been invited both as the photographer who had transformed the company's visual identity and as a valued creative consultant. During her remarks, Morgan publicly acknowledged the company's past missteps in prioritizing short-term financial metrics over human capital and creativity. Then, in an unscripted moment that surprised everyone present, she turned directly to James. "Wilson, there's something I've wanted to ask you for some time now," she said, the room growing quiet. "After everything that happened, are you still upset with me for firing you 4 years ago?" The boardroom fell completely silent as James stood up, his weathered hand steadying himself against the gleaming walnut table. Though his eyes glistened with unexpected tears, his voice remained remarkably composed. "Am I still upset with you?" James echoed, a bittersweet smile forming on his tired face. "That termination letter you handed me didn't just end my career, it saved my family." James glanced around the room before continuing. "When Rebecca died, I buried myself in work to escape the grief. I was physically present but emotionally absent for my children when they needed me most. I was chasing promotions and bonuses, believing that financial security was what mattered most, while missing the irreplaceable moments that actually defined our lives." His voice grew stronger, more certain. "Being fired was the wake-up call I desperately needed but would never have chosen. It forced me to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about success and security. Yes, those first months were terrifying. Yes, I was angry and resentful. But that crucible of hardship pushed me to build something authentic, something that honors my wife's memory and allows me to be the father my children deserve." James turned back to Morgan. "So no, I'm not upset with you anymore. In fact, as paradoxical as it sounds, firing me might have been the greatest favor anyone has ever done for me professionally. It just took me a long time to recognize it as such." The room erupted in spontaneous applause, with several executives visibly moved by the raw honesty of James's response. Morgan herself appeared affected, extending her hand to James, who accepted it without hesitation. Later, as the event concluded, Morgan approached James privately. "That was quite a powerful statement. I didn't expect such grace." James shrugged. "Holding on to resentment only poisons your own life. Besides, my life is good now. Sophie's health has stabilized with me being more available. Ethan's thriving in school and sports. The business continues to grow organically. I work hard, but I work for myself and my family, not for quarterly earnings reports." "You found balance," Morgan observed, adjusting her designer glasses. "Something I'm still struggling to achieve." "It's never too late to recalibrate your priorities," James said. "That's the most valuable lesson I've learned." As they parted ways, James checked his phone. A text from Sophie showed her and Ethan at home preparing a surprise dinner, their attempt at recreating one of their mother's favorite recipes. The photo captured a kitchen in cheerful disarray but featured two smiling children, proud of their culinary efforts. James smiled, pocketing his phone as he headed to his car. The path that had brought him here wasn't one he would have chosen, but standing now on the other side, he wouldn't change a thing. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what truly matters. That evening, as James arrived home to the delicious aroma of his children's cooking attempt, he was greeted by enthusiastic hugs from both Sophie and Ethan. "We made Mom's lasagna," Ethan announced proudly, though the shape was slightly lopsided. "And garlic bread," Sophie added. "We only burned it a little bit on the edges." As they sat around their kitchen table, surrounded by framed photographs James had taken of their family through the years, the conversation flowed easily between them. Sophie's asthma was finally under control with the new medication regimen, and she excitedly shared her plans to try out for the school choir now that she felt confident her health wouldn't interfere. Ethan described his soccer team's chances in the upcoming tournament, occasionally demonstrating his footwork with animated enthusiasm. James watched his children with a profound sense of gratitude. The corporate world had taught him how to build marketing campaigns and manage deadlines, but his journey after being fired had taught him how to build a meaningful life centered on what truly mattered. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed, James sat in his home office reviewing photographs from a recent wedding shoot. On the wall hung a portrait of Rebecca, smiling from a family vacation they'd taken before her diagnosis. Beside it was a framed article from Chicago Style magazine featuring Wilson Photography as one of the city's premier creative businesses. "You were right, Becca," he whispered to the photograph. "You always said I should follow my passion." As he turned off his computer and headed to bed, James reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 4 years. From the devastating low of being escorted from Meridian's offices to the quiet triumph of today's recognition, his path had been anything but straight. Yet here he stood, a successful business owner, a present father, and a man at peace with his choices. The corporate failure that had once seemed like the end had actually been just the beginning. And that, James realized as he drifted off to sleep, was the greatest success story of all.